Hey everyone, Ryan here at Plague Scythe Studios. Welcome to a new edition of Shit You Need. Not done one of these in quite some time, but just like many of the previous installations, today I'm going to be featuring a hodgepodge of stuff, and they're not really related, a couple of which could be kind of argued they're sort of related, but not really. And I even have another freebie in the mix. I'm going to keep that to the end of the video to keep you whippersnappers from clicking off too quickly, because I guess that helps your video be seen or something. I don't know. I don't really care. But also, just like all the previous episodes, this is not sponsored or endorsed by any of the companies or anyone for that matter. This is simply stuff that I have found invaluable over the past few months in what I've been doing with, recording or jamming or some of the things that you got to do to even get to that point. So without further ado, let's get rolling. Over the past several weeks, I've been working on a number of gear projects, one of which is actually right next to me, that have required custom length instrument cables, particularly of the solderless variety. And there's applications where I would definitely say, you should probably go for custom length soldered cables. If I was touring with anything, or if I was going to put stuff under a lot of stress, then yeah, I'd spend the extra time and effort to do that. But what I'm doing, these things work just fine. I ran into a bit of an issue with the ones I acquired, though. Normally, I would buy this stuff new, and in the past, I think even this one came from my last batch of cables, I did buy them new, and I ran into no issues whatsoever. Basically, cut it exactly as you would expect, slip on the tips and screw them in. They work, and I didn't even have to test any of them. They just completely worked out of the box. However, this last time, I needed a lot, far more than one kit was going to provide, and I did have leftover cable. So what I wanted to do was to see if I could find any used, and boy, did I. I found a big lot of them that cost like, I think $80, $90, and it had 4 or 5 times the amount of ends that you would normally get in a kit. Of course, they were like a variety pack of Boss cables and the Dario and all this kind of stuff. And at first, I was having an absolute bitch of a time to get any of these working. In fact, if I recall correctly, only one out of the first like 10 or 12 I attempted to make work. The rest of them were shorted or didn't conduct any signal at all. And eventually come to find out that, through being mailed and handled and stuff, the shielding had stretched, the outside rubber, and wasn't making good contact. So I kind of had to take every cable and, stretch it out, cut off the excess length, and then everything worked as planned. But in order to get to that point, I ended up buying one of these guys. This is a rudimentary version of a cable tester. This is the Dario's own. Of course, it doesn't really matter the brand. It's going to work. The important factor about this is, number one, it's dirt cheap. It's like $10 or $12, and this is the most expensive thing on today's list. So this even works if you're price conscious. And this not only works for your standard TS cables for instrument or speaker applications, but also DC power cables, which I ended up not needing. I'm not making custom length for that, and all my stuff just worked. But either way, it's a nice little bang for your buck if you happen to be doing both. And if you're making a pedal board, it's very likely you're doing that. This thing is super simple. You plug in both sides, and if it works, I can get the cable out of the way, you should get 2 green lights. What that tells you is that you have a connection between the sleeve and you have a connection between the tip. If there was a problem, and if I can get it to malfunction, see, we have an open tip, but the sleeve is connecting. So this could be really helpful, especially if you're soldering your own cables and you want to understand what the problem is. Of course, a short would light this red, and with nothing plugged in, or a short across the entire length of the cable, you're going to have no lights. Now, there are certainly cable testers out there that are far more resilient and offer you a hell of a lot more, not only connection standards, but data as well. Some of them have like digital readouts and all that kind of stuff. But for the average Joe Schmo like me, if all you're doing is making, a pedal board, and especially with solderless stuff, this will save you precious minutes, perhaps even hours, depending on the complexity of your build, pulling your hair out, wondering what the hell is wrong. Obviously, I wouldn't recommend you just put a bunch of cables together and like assemble your board and then wonder why it's not working when you try to plug into it. Test them as you go. But still, this will let you know really quickly if there's something wrong with your technique or if there's something wrong with the cables and materials themselves. So an absolutely invaluable tool, and it's come in handy on another soldered, traditional instrument cable. I've had that, I just dropped it on the floor, something happened, one of the tips broke, soldered it back, good to go. And this told me immediately where to look. The next item has literally nothing to do with guitar playing or even electronics in general, but doesn't make it any less useful for that. So this is generic anti-slip drawer liner. You might have this in your kitchen already, you might have it in your bathroom, and it lines drawers as it says it's supposed to. It keeps, like your utensils from slipping around too badly when you jerk open a drawer when, you're trying to run back to the kitchen in between matches of your favorite FPS like I do. You might have it in like a toolbox to keep your tools from slipping and sliding around. But what I've found to be really useful about this is to make an interface between a guitar pedal and a slick surface, whether that surface be a desktop or hardwood or vinyl or tile flooring. There's plenty of times where I'm playing a pedal. Hell, I think most of the time I'm playing a pedal that's not attached to a board. And whether I'm singing it on my slick floor or the desktop, sometimes, especially if they're not particularly heavy, if you go to either turn it on or off, or you want to make some changes, it's slipping and sliding everywhere. You might, especially something like this with exposed screws, you might scratch your desktop up and that's no good. You might disconnect a cable, something annoying like that. So what I've been doing is just cutting out small little strips like this. And whenever I want to play, 1 to 3 loose pedals, that's where it goes. It sits right there. And with the weight of just one pedal of something like an MXR Boss style pedal, generally it's not going anywhere. If you want to get real fancy, and I'm actually considering doing this myself, you could always permanently affix this to a desktop, maybe both sides, I'm not decided yet, through screws, double-sided tape, glue, whatever looks the best for you. I keep a roll like this to put on tables, and even this to work on guitars every now and then, especially if it's something really simple. So lining a tabletop with that could be really helpful for guitar maintenance. Anything that you don't want to slip. And to be fair, when it comes to electric guitar playing, I'd say that's most things. This can be really handy. If you have a really light pedal, especially one that has individual feet, it might still move around on you a little bit. This will still be an improvement. Like the Behringer pedals I have, they don't like to stay put no matter what. But even something like the Rat, which has individual feet on it, of course it's heavy, but I've not really had any issues as far as that goes. But for me, if you like to test out individual overdrives, or you're running a preamp right into an interface, or maybe you have like a stereo digital effect that you're using as outboard gear or something like that for reamping, I'm going to start doing this pretty much from now on, because I don't know why the hell I didn't think of it sooner, but it's already saved my desktop finish, and keeping cabling and all that stuff in place, that's a good enough reason for me. My third and final pick, or picks for the day, exist in the digital plugin space. And unfortunately, this was a last minute change, because the one I was going to recommend that's in the same kind of space, literally, I found out it's no longer free. It was only free for a limited time, which sucks because I've been burning this plugin up since then. That is Native Instruments Rom, or Raum, however the hell you say that. If someone speaks German in the audience, please correct me. But this is something that it's not your dad's reverb, okay? This isn't like your Boss reverb pedal. Oh, we got a hall setting, got a plate, no, screw all that. Like, it can do the subtle, vocal plates and drum ambience, but it goes to full-blown wacky territory. There's all kinds of modes and stuff to adjust, and the built-in presets sound absolutely incredible. So if you plan to use it to its full potential, then I'd say the $50 is still worth it and may be something you actually need. But the other alternatives I've picked, I still use. They sound awesome, just maybe not as versatile, and they are definitely free. And these are the Tal Reverb 2 and 3. I don't know if there was ever a 1 at some point. These are separate plugins. I'm most familiar with 2. I've started to play around with 3. I like it, but 2 is like just absolutely incredible. Either way, I can't believe these things are free. 2 has some really nice controls that let it be that super lush, like grainy, high-end thing that I like out of a lot of plate reverbs, but you can dial it back to be more tame as well. You got stuff like a room size adjustment that's on 3 as well. You have low, mid, and high controls. I believe 3 only has, Yes, low and high cut. So you can kind of tame where you want the reverb to sit in the mix. If you want a more springy, clangy thing, you can kind of dial that in. If you want, just a little on the high end, which I love to put on, especially like keys and orchestral stuff. That sounds really great. You got a wet and dry level. You can even do stereo inputs to get a larger stereo image that way. For the genres I play and the sounds I like, these two pieces of freeware are more valuable than a lot of the $40 to $100 reverb plugins out there, even the convolution based ones. And I think, especially if you're on a tight budget or you're looking for a good do-it-all kind of reverb sound, this may be a little too lush, especially 3 for some of the stuff maybe that you're going after, but it's definitely worth a try. And I think can absolutely complement some of like the built-in plugins you'd find on Cubase or Logic if those aren't cutting it for you. So this plus a couple other more specialized reverbs, and you should be good for a long time. And with that, we have once again reached the end of the shit you need. No real, curveballs in this one. They're all pretty practical. Nothing revolutionary or genius either, but I have used all of this, some of which I've completely burned up in the past 3 months or so. I figured if I found some value in it, hopefully some of you guys do as well. Any other questions and comments, please leave them down below. Thank you so very much for watching as always, and I will see you next time. Bye.